So hi everybody and good morning. We have this session today on issues relating to taxation and other legislation which usually at this time of the year the government enters into a conversation with the industry to take inputs before they formulate the budget and changes that come in the budget. So it's an opportunity where the government encourages the industry to come and share what changes the industry would like to see. So today, we've had several issues pertaining to dual taxation, both service tax and GST being, or rather VAT being levied on the products, the definition of what is a product from a taxation perspective, issues pertaining to TDS being deducted from startups that don't have tax liabilities, delays in refunds of TDS. So these are some of the concern areas, and we've got an excellent person to talk about all these things. We have Bharat Goenka here, who, as most of you would know, is the founder and managing director of Tally Solutions, and he is, acknowledged as the expert on the subject, and has helped formulate our representation to the government. So over to you, Bharat. Why don't you give us a quick sort of sum up, and then maybe we could have a few questions addressed.
Sure. Thanks, Sumit. I want to start it by separating the issues into first two broad buckets. One is relating to the direct tax problem, which is TDS and so on, and why and when TDS is applied and what should be the perspective that the industry has, and therefore how we should position in front of the government. And the second is relating to the indirect tax bucket, which is the confusion around excise and service tax as it relates to products and its definitions, and the applicability or non-applicability of VAT as it relates to trading in those activities. I'll start with the indirect tax bucket first, because it's the more confusing bucket first. Right? And before talking about it in the context of our industry, and just to ensure there is continuity of discussion, want to start from the constitutional frame, which basically makes a statement that manufacturing and services is taxed by the center, and anything which is traded is taxed by the state. So VAT is applied whenever a trading activity takes place, and if a non-trading activity, which is manufacturing, is a non-trading activity until it is sold. Manufacturing is not a trading activity, and service is inherently treated as a non-trading activity. Both of them come to the center. The one gray area which has not been there just from now, and it is aggravated definitely by the software industry, but it has been a perpetual facet of services, is the concept of a right to service, where the right to service tends to be tradable until the service is rendered, and once the service is consumed, it is no longer tradable. So the right of service has been defined as the transfer of title, where a title to the right of service gets transferred, and because it is tradable, it comes under the purview of the state taxes, part as out of the constitutional right. The inability to sharply define them creates this confusion as to when I am trading in the right to service, should I be charging only VAT, which is perfectly a valid point. However, ultimately some service tax needs to be paid because it is a service which was rendered. So this is presently not a clean representation either to the government or a clean way of operating. So many people land up charging both service tax and VAT on the same invoice because of the absence of clarity and the absence of the sharp distinction between what is a service versus what is a right to service.
One question I have for you, which is relevant here, and I think you brought out a very important point on the conveyance of right of service, which is very relevant because so I think that a good example to understand that is the right to stay in a hotel room.
Correct.
So you don't get any rights to the ownership of the hotel room. You only get an option to stay
Correct.
one night, and that right to stay in a room can be traded. So the
Yes.
hotel can give it to an aggregator, the aggregator can give it to a portal, the portal can give it to an eventual guest.
Yeah.
Um, but in law,
Mm.
a right to service is traded. Is the right to service in itself treated as a good, or the profit on right to service treated as a service in itself in terms of the service to sell and distribute?
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately the margin that is made between the price at which the right is bought and the price at which the right is sold is
Yeah.
the net value addition which ought to be taxed.
Right.
That value addition, is it understood as service or is it understood as a transfer of goods?
Yeah. So now these, if you take the history of litigations associated with trying to distinguish between them, you will find cases which have walked on both the paths. So on one path, you have got cases which have walked to say that the concept of a right to service is inherently not a service, and therefore it is treated as a good. And now to manufacture right of service is not a manufacturing activity. It is just the creation of an entitlement, and it is not treated as a manufacture, but it is tradable. So only the trading activity is VAT. And finally, the service itself is the value of the service on which service tax is paid. Okay? So you will find examples of that in things like the telco, where the telecommunication industry is really giving you the service of which is what you avail as a customer. But the recharge cards are traded in the market so that you as a person can get the appropriate right to use that telecommunication service. So because these have not been, see, prior to automation, so software industry is one statement, but overall, prior to automation, this concept of right to service was not a easily tradable concept or even an easily creatable concept. So a lot of the historical laws, which are, because most of our laws are inherited over decades. So a lot of the historical laws did not have this very clean separation between these two things. And as and when these industries have come into existence, they have created these situations where either they have not given enough clarity to the government as to how they should write the law, and therefore it has gone into litigation. So the service tax department can therefore theoretically claim that the panwala who's sending you the recharge card is selling you a service, which is reality. He is not selling you a service. He does not know how to provide you this service. He's selling you only a right to service. And unless those, and what we as an industry need to do is help the government formulate this distinction. And just to take that matter sharper, if you today are a SaaS provider, fundamentally you will be operating along two models. One is a customer directly pays you, you directly invoice the customer for the service for which the customer is engaging with you. That is and should be free of VAT, because that is a direct service invoice with a direct service rendering. Contrast that with that you are trying to create an ecosystem which allows your ecosystem to go and get people to avail of your service by selling them right to service. So if you are wanting to create a frame of delivering your service through the sales of right to service, that right to service by constitution should be allowed to be VATed, should incur a VAT, and therefore simplify the trade. And the trade should not require to charge service tax. Now, the moment we try to avoid both, that means the trade should not charge service tax and the trade should not charge VAT, we create friction in the entire process, because now no one knows where this thing is supposed to fall.
And I have a question here for you.
Sure.
In terms of our stand and our representation to the government to sort of nail this thing down,
yeah,
would it be, would it be correct to say that what we are asking is that when services are resold, the right to service is resold,
yeah,
can we not say that service tax should be charged and input credit should be availed, and Therefore, the incremental value should be service tax. Will that be flawed, or why are we saying that we should treat the right to service sale as a valuable thing? So we have an input credit that will eventually flow to the end customer on service tax, which is an element of price now in the hands of the reseller, and the reseller's margin is valuable. That's what I understood you say. So between the two approaches, which one are we recommending and why?
Yeah, so for that, so there are two parts of it. One is what we can and should recommend. The other is under what frame will that recommendation be applicable. So and that's the reason why I started with the constitutional frame. So the constitutional frame is that when something is traded, the state government has the right to tax it, and that tax is called VAT. Okay? So it is not about the vatability, because excise is also vatable, service tax is also vatable, and what we call VAT is also vatable. So in the context of the word vatable is that you are able to take input credit for the tax which was paid and therefore charge on the incremental element. So all the three taxes are vatable. In excise it is called SENVAT, in service tax is called SENVAT, and VAT it is called VAT. So that is one part of the puzzle.
But they are not fungible, right? So
they are not fungible.
When the seller sells, the seller charges service tax. But in the hands of the reseller, the entire sale price becomes vatable with no set of VAT available from the original seller. So basically, the tax incidence on the poor reseller becomes very high by this definition.
So
because you cannot offset VAT that you have charged with service tax that you have paid.
Yeah. So now assume for a moment that what you are saying, and we will again measure it against the constitutional frame, that you sell to me, I am your reseller, and you charge me service tax, and I add my profit, I sell to the customer, and I also charge service tax to the customer. In this frame, because I am charging service tax, nothing goes to the state, because service tax is a central tax. So it is not about the vatability problem. The problem is the constitution gives the state a right to charge this tax. And now the state is not going to get anything. As a reseller, I am going to be answerable to the state that I have resold something. Why did I not pay the relevant tax to the state government? So while I may not have any problem with the service tax department, I will definitely have a problem with the state department.
Should we not be making a representation to say that a suitable amendment should be made to allow this to happen?
But that is a suitable amendment to the constitution, which is a problem in itself. See, it is not a suitable amendment to the service tax and the VAT law. This is a amendment to the constitution. So changes to the service tax and VAT laws, 100% we are able to make recommendations and make them come through. Constitutional changes are a different ball game. Can they be done? Yes, they can be done. Under what frame will they happen? So GST is the first time when the constitution is being amended to remove many of these anomalies. Because under GST, not technically, even states will get access to manufacturing tax, they will get access to service tax, and the center will also get access to trading tax. So that's the amendment which is going to happen with GST. Ahead of that, these amendments are not going to be practical and possible. So we have to ensure that we are getting clarity of the law so that both the dualities don't exist and people don't get into that burden. So now to take the kind of amendment which we can ask for to reach the benefit that you are looking for. The benefit you are looking for is, you have sold to me, you have charged me service tax. The customer should be able to avail the benefit of that service tax. Enough precedence exists for this frame to happen, which is, you charge me service tax, I will invoice to the customer only on VAT. I am not charging the customer service tax. I am charging the customer VAT. The customer will have the benefit of getting the input credit for the service tax that you have paid to the government, and get the benefit of paying the getting the input credit for the VAT that they have paid me.
But the VAT is now on full value.
Pardon?
Which, because you will collect, let's say 12.36, 12.5% VAT is applicable.
Correct.
For argument's sake.
Yes.
Now, I'm selling a good worth 100 rupees. The right to service was 100 rupees.
Correct.
I have to charge 12 rupees 50 paisa VAT.
Correct.
Okay. Normally, I would have deducted from it what I would have paid my vendor and deposited the remaining. Now there is nothing that I paid to my vendor because my vendor, being an ISV, did not charge any VAT. Now, in two cases, one, I have collected 12.5 rupees, I have to deposit 12.5 rupees.
Correct.
Two, my customer, being a service company, no VAT that they charge on whatever they sell, they get no credit for it. So, effectively, even if they get credit for service tax, and let's say therefore the incidence of tax is set off,
Yep.
they have a net incidence outflow of 12.5 rupees worth of VAT, which they get no credit for.
Absolutely. There is no denying that, and that is true because you have chosen to take the benefit of a tradable commodity. If you had not chosen to bring in a tradable aspect of it, that would not have taken place. Right? And it is part of the, again, the frame of the governance that if trade takes place, so let's take a pure service tax company, a pure service tax consumer of your services. So a pure services company will be actually purchasing many things which are potentially VATable for their business, on which VAT is charged. Whether it is fixed assets that they'll be purchasing for their business, which technically they could have taken VAT offsets for, which they cannot take. Potentially they will be taking services from you, for which they, and because they have taken it through a trading channel, there will be a VAT incidence, which they will not be able to get offset for. So that is a fundamental reality. I mean, that has got nothing to do with, we are not aggravating the situation by saying that because software has got involved, suddenly the frame has changed. The present problem genuinely is nothing to do with whether this is aggravating the frame. The present problem is absence of clarity does not allow simplicity of trade. Neither do you, as the original provider of service, do you have adequacy of clarity as to when and why you should charge VAT. Neither does your ability to create resellers with adequate clarity as to how they should trade, and neither me as a buyer have adequate clarity as the invoices that I am receiving, what all should be there on it and what all can I do with it.
Okay. In the interest of time, let's move on to TDS.
Yeah.
Where, if I can sum up, the problem is that you have two situations. You have a situation where you have a profit-making company which has an obligation to pay tax.
Yeah.
And assuming that there is a 30% plus margin on which, say, a 30% or so tax rate is applied, then about 10% is the tax that you collect on the net sale value.
Yeah.
And therefore, the 10% TDS on professional services, which is applicable to most services rendered in and around software, including SaaS. That's the government's logic of having a 10% rate. So far, so this is the same sort of playing field on which the entire industry operates.
Yeah.
But we have a peculiar situation because of the business dynamics of software companies, where you have initial periods of sustained losses and negative cash flows, which result in no tax dues. And then you have a couple of years where your tax, your previous losses help you offset your tax liability, and you set off your old losses against your current profits. You get like an 8-year window to do that.
Yeah.
Now, in our current provisions, there is no provision to not pay TDS or not have somebody deduct TDS from your payments if you are not going to have a net tax liability. There is only one window, I think it's called Section 15, where you go to your income tax officer and cite a case, and the income tax officer gives you customer-specific, amount-specific waiver saying that that one certificate, you can go to one customer and say, I have a certificate, therefore please do not deduct tax when you pay me. Obviously, that doesn't work when you have a lot of things. Now, there are several representations that have been made over the years. One, of course, is that, even if we leave everything as it is, it can take anywhere from 18 months. Usually, you file your tax return in September, which is in any case about 6 months after your financial year has ended. Then it takes the government till March or so in the new normal course if you're not gone through scrutiny to make the refund and if everything is right with the government finances. But it's anybody's guess. You could, so in any case, you're looking at about, on an average, a year's delay on the money that you collect. And the interest rate is a pathetic 6%. And the government, again, has a very good logic for it because there are large corporates which are cash rich and the moment you raise the interest rate, they actually start paying huge amounts of advance tax because as far as they're concerned, they are depositing their money for interest with the government. So we have that come from the government. So basically, on one side, we are talking about asking the government to pay refunds faster. But we also in the past made representations saying that, give us, we make it a little more intelligent and well-defined so that it's not left to our discretion of the idea, but fundamentally give us some relief on deduction of TDS itself if we do not have a tax liability. This year, what are we going with and why?
Yeah. So Sumit, in that, first you have outlined this problem very well, and one aspect of the problem which you have missed out has been that as per law, apart from the fact that software services VAT rates are equal to other professional services, software products also attract TDS, and the software products may be the only goods which attract TDS. Not maybe, is the only goods which attract TDS, where therefore the tradability of software products, and from that perspective, when you get into tradability of right to service, will also have that same aggravation. So the one basic frame is that typically when you take professional services, they tend to be one-to-one. You cannot really trade in the right to professional service. However, you can trade in the right to a software service, which is one of the reasons why the software industry is so important even for the economy, because as a single service provider, you have the ability to reach out to a far larger number of beneficiaries than a normal professional organization can. And that is because you have this inherent ability to trade the right to service. But if the concept of the right to service also attracts TDS because of the way the law is framed, that will also cause tremendous friction, and that is already causing enough friction in the product space. So I'm just taking first, including this aspect of it into the context of the representation that requires to be made. So one is taking the point which you made, that the nature of this industry is that you are perpetually attracting new customers. It is therefore not practical, even if law permits you to seek for a TDS deduction. You cannot seek a TDS deduction, a TDS deduction relief from potentially unknown customers, right? So that frame works very well when you have got steady income from a steady customer base, and because you don't have enough profits, you can seek that redressal from the department. But in an industry which is attempting to grow, that redressal doesn't work. So obviously we require another instrument which will simplify this. A very important point to start it with, and I want to refer to that point. For people, for organizations, whether they are software companies who have reached profit-making maturity, TDS is a great way to manage your cash flow. So TDS inherently is not a problem. The problem is the point which you made, that because the nature of the industry is such that early years do not allow you sufficiency of profits, and this is a very aggravated problem. So we definitely require a different way, which is different from the present section 15, which is a point-to-point deduction versus making a single point deduction statement. That is to say, Tally Solutions can ask for saying that for Tally Solutions invoices, you need not deduct TDS, rather than saying Tally Solutions invoices to Sumit need not deduct TDS. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is, the moment any aspect of it is tradable, the tradable component cannot attract TDS because that is inherently against the very nature of TDS. Because trading margins, so a service margin or a product margin is one aspect, but a trading margin
is inherently not taxed at source.
Yeah, absolutely. So these two principles require to be brought in front of the ministry, where no tradable activity should have TDS, which is to align it with every single other trading activity in the country. It doesn't matter whether it is software or non-software, right to service, non-right to service. No trading activity should attract TDS. The second is for businesses where the service inherently is meant for a much wider audience. The concept of reduced or zero TDS, the frame has to change to allow that businesses to expand, because that is what is good for the economy. Because if the business expands, you have more beneficiaries of the service. Those beneficiaries of the service are contributing to the economy because you are trying to improve the productivity of your customers. It is not about just getting tax from the service provider. It is about increasing productivity of the country as a whole. So both those representations are an important representation to make.
There was a third representation which seemed implausible till recently because, you know, one was given to the left hand and one was given to the right hand, and traditionally the government's left and right did not talk to each other, but we've had a prime minister who spoke from Red Fort saying that the left and right should coordinate. Is it time to go back and tell them that, look, what we pay you as TDS, but we don't need to pay you. If you cannot give us a waiver to not have it deducted from our customers, by our customers, at least give us a credit so that we can set off what we have to pay you as service tax. Because at the end of the day, CBDC, which charges service tax, are responsible for service tax, and CBDT, which charges income tax and TDS, are both central government entities.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just saying in the changed political context where suddenly logical things start making sense now. You know, all this has always made logical sense to us, but it doesn't work with the government. Do you think it's time to sort of put that back on the ask agenda that we have for the ministry?
So, as an ask, I have always believed that we have a right to ask and other people have a right to refuse. So, as an ask, I am 100% in sync that we should ask for everything. The reason why I started with that caveat is the simplest, your early wins will come from non-cross departmental confusions. So why in the beginning I talked about, I had that, my point of view about service tax and VAT was because it is now moving across a barrier. The moment you move across a barrier, to cross that barrier, is it possible? 100% possible. GST will happen only because someone has crossed that barrier. So it is not that it is not possible, but its cycles are different from those which can be contained inside one scope. 100%, because the point which you made will also become good for pure service companies which have got VAT input credit which they have no way of availing. So if they are able to take that input credit and offset it, it's great. Similarly, you may have TDS credits which you may not have been able to avail. The fundamental problem of allowing TDS credit to be used somewhere else is only after your income tax assessment does the government even know whether your TDS is more than the tax you should have paid.
Well, technically, two things. One, technically, if not during the financial year, certainly at the close of the financial year, if I file my return in time, and this could be a great incentive for people to file their return well ahead of time.
Yeah.
Once I file my return on, it is in many ways from the government's point of view deemed to be correct, because it may go through without selective scrutiny. So it is deemed to be correct, and therefore at that point in time, I technically should be able to get a voucher, so to say, or a credit. Also, because now it is on 26 AS, and therefore it is all reconciled the day I file my return in any case. The second thing is that, you know, we do make representation and get an opportunity to make it at the revenue secretary level. Now, the revenue secretary level is actually the boss of both CBDT and CBDC.
100%.
Yeah. So I think at least at that point in time, at that case, I for one would urge that we should do it, because you see, it also in some ways puts them on the back foot, because 99% because of the complexity of doing this, they will come back and say no, and that could be a beginning, trip to bargain and say, okay, if you're saying no to that, then at least give us the.
No, absolutely I agree, because as I said, that three things are there. One is, can you give me input credit into my other tax? If you can't, can you at least give me the money back the day I file my return, as an example, and so on. So 100% I agree with you that one is the representation of what kind of problem this is causing, and therefore what are the alternate remedies. Absolutely, we should be representing.
And because interestingly, as the law stands, even if I file a return and I file for refunds, and my case goes into scrutiny, my refunds are not to be held up for want of scrutiny. In the scrutiny, if it is found that my refund was incorrect, a demand is raised, but you cannot hold my refund. So technically, my refund is due the day I make my return.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Absolutely, I agree with you.
Good. Do we have any other questions, on record from other participants that we can take up at this point, Nakul, Avi?
And Nakul, I also wanted to introduce Pramod, our CFO. He was also listening in. To introduce Pramod, if you have any clarification.
No, of course. I listened to the two parts of the thing. One was regarding, of course, the VAT and the service tax issue, which primarily I suppose was relating to product licensing. Because I remember doing a CFO forum about 3 years ago, where I think the revenue secretary or his number 2 was present, and he made a very clear statement that I'm afraid this anomaly of charging both service tax and VAT will continue, because we have no control over the states and they insist on charging VAT. So hopefully that will go away only when GST is implemented, which I suppose is not looking at. I don't know. I don't think 15, 16 will happen. 16, 17 is likely to happen as such.
Yeah.
The TDS part, yes, the refund is, well, technically, as they say, on filing of return, refund is due, but it doesn't happen. Losses, and the refund will obviously arise. It can take 18 months to 36 months at times.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I think just to clarify, if I heard Bharat say this correctly, I think what we are asking on the whole VAT and service tax duplicity is that the elements of which VAT is charged and the element on which service tax is charged needs to be delineated clearly. If you can get that clarity, even when GST comes your mind, our issue is not so much, quite honestly, both being charged. As Bharat very well explained, that constitutionally we cannot escape that much as we would like to have one, simple specific sake, nothing else. But I think if the issue that we face as industry is the discretion, especially with which the states assume what is the amount on which the tax is to be charged. What are components? So I think what we are asking is actually at this moment only a clear, sort of a clarity on that. Which we can take back to the states. And understandably, I know Bharat will agree with me that I think there we have to insert this caveat that the states have a mind of their own. Even with a CBEC clarification, the states may just throw it out and say, I don't recognize this. It's not my, because they constitutionally have a right to have their own way.
Yeah, so just to take give an example on that point, Sumit. At one point, see, the telcos were the first ones to actually fully stress test the system about 10, 12 years ago, when this whole concept of recharge cards came in. And the thing was that, let's assume, just to take numbers, let's assume the service tax was 10% and VAT was 5%, and I'm selling a recharge card of 200 rupees to you. What is obvious is that I have to pay 20 rupees of service tax, because 10% service tax is there. Now, am I supposed to charge 5% on the 200 rupees, because the value of my recharge is 200, or am I supposed to charge it on 1 rupee or 50 paisa because I have given you a recharge card? That card, physical card, is worth 20 rupees, and what is being traded is that physical card. Okay? And that's the direction in which they started it with. Now, you put yourself in the place of a state finance minister, and you discover that 500 crore rupees worth of trading business is happening in your state, and people are paying you tax on 5 lakh, on 50 lakh rupees.
Correct.
And
your job is to get revenues for the state, you know, righteousness.
Feel happy about it, that the constitutional right has been given to you, that when something of value is traded in your state, you are supposed to get tax for it. And now 500 crore rupees worth of value is being traded in your state, and you get nothing for it. So that was the first stress test on this subject.
But you hear, not necessarily from the point of view of the representation to the government, but what's your view on using an ORC model, which basically means that you do not have a right to service being traded, but a customer acquisition being provided as a service, which means my reseller is, so, you know, the contract remains between the ISV and the consumer.
Yep.
Of the software, and all intermediaries become sales service providers.
Yeah.
And they are reimbursed by an overriding commission model, the ORC model, or whatever other mechanism, but they don't sort of take their cut from the sale revenue passing through them, but they get paid a share by the ISV. What have you, in your experience, you know, one, is that even legally, is there a way that even that can be sort of tracked legally and from a taxation point of view by the states? And two, you know channels so well, do you think it's even feasible?
Yeah, so this is a combination of saying that, see, you can do a combination of front end and back end. You can do a pure back end, which you are talking about, which therefore you are no longer trading anything. You are only appointing customer acquisition agents, and customer acquisition agents therefore receive a commission from you, and it is not a trade discount. And when they receive a commission from you, it will attract the appropriate commission associated taxes, whether TDS deduction.
Yeah, service tax and a TDS on that.
Yeah. So there are, I mean, those are our business models. I mean, nothing in law prevents us from following the appropriate business model, and the business model that you would follow is what will give you the required velocity associated with the velocity that your business can manage. So in our case as Tally, we use a hybrid, we use a combination of front end and back end, and simply because of our velocity of transaction, because we do approximately 1,000 commercial transactions a day, and for us that those commercial transactions are simplified by allowing people to sell rather than allowing people to act as agents. Because when people act as agents, then typically there is a question of when will the invoice go to the customer, when will the customer pay, who will track the payment, etc. So that is the way we follow our model. The underlying point I'm making is that all of these are present acceptable models from the government perspective. You have to give the relevant clarity to the relevant authority and bear the relevant cost of business, right? Which may be either cost in terms of velocity of business or cost in terms of the associated taxes of business.
Bharat, I have a clarification. You mentioned about allowing your agents to sell or something else. I couldn't get the difference between the two.
Okay.
And then Pramod.
Sorry, Vishnu, I lost your voice. I don't know if you can hear me, but just to get clarity, let's say I'm acting on behalf of Nucleus, and I find you a customer on whom you raise an invoice, and the customer pays you. Therefore, you pay me for doing that work for you. So therefore, I am receiving a commission from you. I am not receiving a trade discount from you.
Got it.
Yeah. So that model is a presently existing model. It's not that it is violating any business principle today.
What I was trying to say was that on the goods and services issue, the issue which came up at various forums is that the product is either a good or a goods or a service. And while the constitutional amendment, I think, is the 44th and the one there is also the Supreme Court ruling where right to use was held as goods as such, right? So the question is whether you're taxing the same item as both as a goods and both as a service, which is where the government clarified that we will charge you service tax and the state will charge you VAT and you'll have to live with it. So all we did was we promptly made sure that at least for our license sales in UPS, we had issues with some customers because they would either pay VAT or they would pay service tax. They were refusing to pay both as such. But that's what the industry is doing today, and it is a burden, there is no doubt.
No, 100% I agree. And that is the statement of the original points I was making about the requirement of the clarity that first taking the constitutional frame, only if you are traded in that activity does the state have a right to charge you tax. Therefore, can we bring in the statement that I have created a right to service for which the state has a right? The state has no right to charge you on service. But because we are not bringing this clarity that when a service is rendered, no right has been transferred. But if we are making a statement, and that's what the industry in the past has represented, that when I sell software, what I have done is I have transferred a right to use. Now, the moment you make that statement, by the constitution, VAT should be chargeable. But really speaking, that representation is inherently wrong. Because if I am making a statement that I've sold you a right to use, you should have been able to resell the right to use. But you as a consumer of my product, you don't have that right. Therefore, the state should not have had a right to charge VAT on that, but the center should have had a right to charge service on that. Now, these are the, irrespective of whatever reasons these misunderstandings have taken place, either because of different people representing or different circumstances which are represented or the different maturity cycle of the industry. The present time is that we know, and now with the advent of SaaS companies, because at the time when these representations were made, SaaS companies did not exist.
Right.
And many of these representations were made when there was actually zero tax on software. And so it was perfectly okay. It did not matter whether you are calling it a service, you are calling it right to use, you are calling it whatever. And everyone was happy about it.
Yeah, for services, tax on software services is probably 5 years. But VAT was always there on the license part of it. But I must caution that in product companies, the moment we start talking of goods and licenses, excisability comes into play at times, depending on how you are structuring the business.
100%. And I must admit that I am being one of the people who have been the cause of the problem. That at the time when there was zero taxes on software, in one of the planning commission meetings, it was being proposed that should taxes come, and I had definitely made a statement that as any industry matures, they require to participate and contribute into the economy. So I am 100% for saying that if we have to pay excise, we will pay excise. If you have to pay service tax, we will pay service tax. I am also 100% again saying that we will pay it without clarity.
So both the
can I get some audience questions?
Product icons. Sorry, Sumit. Both the icons went to the same college, right?
He's talking on Narayan Murthy, talking about Infosys paying taxes and where did they go, but they go about. And again, let me not get into that enough. Open discussion.
I have some questions from the audience. Bharat. Let's take those questions.
Sure.
Ali, can you help us with those?
Is anyone speaking?
So Sumit, the questions will appear on the right now. So there is a question from Tushar.
I can see that. So there's a question. Hi, Tushar, if you're tuned in. Question from Tushar Bhatia. Does the SaaS model remove the VAT issue?
If you do not trade, answer is yes. If you trade, the answer is no.
Any more questions? Yes. Can I call you in like 5 minutes? What number should I call you?
Yeah.
Avinash, where do you see questions? I'm opening the chat screen. I don't see anything there.
Yeah, there are questions on the right hand side. Only there was one question which came up.
Okay.
Yeah. Sumit, since we don't have many questions, do you want to take up anything else as of now?
No, I think we've covered a fair bit of stuff. Bharat, any closing remarks? Otherwise, I think we should close.
No, my only closing remarks, I think the great work which has been happening in Delhi, with Nakul and with everyone participant, we have, after a long time, a glimmer of hope that we can drive for adequacy of clarity. So that even ahead, one of the reasons which I am very, very particular that we should get clarity even before GST happens is that GST by itself is not going to solve problems. GST will remain a dual administrative tax. That means both the state and the government are going to be sharing taxes based on the nature of the activity which has got taxed. So they are not having equal share on every single invoice. They are having a share on the invoice depending upon what the nature of that invoice is. So if the confusion of the software industry which is existing today continues to exist tomorrow, our problems will continue even in the future. So we have definitely a clear opportunity to ensure that the right ground is laid. So in the coming future, we are continuing to be able to take advantage of it. And today's regime, as well as the signals that we have received and the kind of ear and attention which is being shown, at least gives a very great confidence that we should be able to go past this bump this time. That's really my summary.
Okay. Before we close, there is one question, and I think we can take that again from Tushar. Says, can you clarify more on what is meant by trade? Also, there is a case being made for VAT for international sales. Two questions there.
I'm still not able to see the questions here.
So if you click on the Q&A,
can someone repaste it into something so that I'm...
There's a Q&A button on the left side.
Yeah, I've been opening that. I've got that button open. Now it's, sorry.
Will open on the right.
Can you clarify more on what is meant by trade? And also, is there a case being made for VAT for international sales? So what is meant by trade? So just to restate, Tushar, if you are running a SaaS company, I as your customer come and buy that service from you directly. There is no trade involved. I consume your service and therefore service tax is involved. Contrast it with that I become your reseller. You sell me an ability to sell the right to your service so that I can sell your right to service to someone who can then come and consume your service. Now that is the action of trade. So from a constitutional perspective, selling the right to service is a trading activity which therefore involves VAT. And that is the concept of trade, and therefore there is this VATability. Now VAT for international inherently does not exist. So that exports don't attract VAT. There are certain circumstances and certain types of invoices on which you may require to pay VAT and then claim it back as a credit. And those are clearly defined in the appropriate laws of the various states. But from a fundamental constitutional perspective, international trade does not attract VAT. Does that help?
With that, I think since we don't have another question and you've already made your closing remarks, let's bring this session to a close. Thank you very much, Bharat, for participating. participating and of course sharing. I'm hoping we're all wiser today at the end of your explanations. And on behalf of everybody, thank you for joining. And I seriously hope that all these representations will bring some relief to all of us because.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, and thanks, Sumit, because I think you made sure that this brought out all the relevant points very, very beautifully. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Pleasure. Thank you once again, everybody, and thank you, brother. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.